Hola, amigas, amigos, y amigues, and welcome to a YAMA Online all-new original series, Música en Contexto, streamable wherever internet is found. The goal of Música en Contexto is to get you thinking more about music in a broader sense, in the context of society and current events, and basically about how music reflects and shapes the world around us. So today's musical adventure takes us to Puerto Rico. ¿Dónde está Puerto Rico? I'm glad you asked. Puerto Rico is right here. It's this little green island here. This is the Caribbean. Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's called Caribbean. BT dubs. Here's Cuba, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, and here's Central America. Here, Florida, the coast of the Gulf of Mexico kind of continues around that way. And here's the northern bit of South America. So this whole chain of islands right here is called the Antilles. These larger islands here, Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, República Dominicana. This island is called Hispaniola, by the way. These are all the Greater Antilles because they are bigger, and pretty much from Puerto Rico, like from there to the east, those are the Lesser Antilles because they are smaller. I feel like a weather person right now. Okay, so Puerto Rico is the largest territory of the U.S. with a population of más o menos 3.2 million, which is a little under half the population of Washington. Spanish is the most widely spoken language in Puerto Rico. About 95% of people there hablan español as their first language, and Spanish is the official language used in governments and schools. Its capital city is San Juan, which is right there. Um, and Puerto Riqueños often refer to themselves as Boricuas, which is a word that comes from the language of the indigenous Taino people. Puerto Rico was colonized by Spain starting in the 1490s, which is why Spanish is the most spoken language. But it has been a territory of the U.S. since 1898, when the U.S. and Spain signed the Treaty of Paris, ending the Spanish American War. Puerto Riqueños are the second largest Latinx group in the U.S. after Mexicans. Besides those that live in PR, there are around 5.8 million Puerto Ricanos in the continental U.S., and that's two-thirds of the total of all Puerto Ricans. And they especially live in New York City and Philadelphia and other cities of the Northeast and Florida as well. Those are places where you'll find a lot of Puerto Ricans. Um, as I mentioned before, Puerto Rico is a territory of the U.S., not a state. So that means that Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens, um, the people of most but not all U.S. territories are U.S. citizens. But PR has no voting representatives in Congress, and its residents do not vote in presidential elections. They have a non voting representative in Congress, which is kind of mean, if you ask me, to let them have a representative who doesn't get to vote. Anyway, because it is given less importance in our political system, PR also does not get much national media coverage. This becomes particularly clear during hurricane season, unfortunately. Storm damage and casualties in Puerto Rico tend to be reported far less than those that happen on the mainland U.S. You'll see it less on TV and less on internet news, and the federal government was drastically, and I mean drastically, slower in providing aid to Puerto Rican victims of Hurricane Maria in 2017 than victims of Hurricane Harvey in Texas that same year. Well, in contrast to its relative invisibility in politics and the media, Puerto Rican music, interestingly, has a large presence and tremendous influence in mainstream American popular culture. Many of the most popular musicians in the U.S. have been Puerto Rican, from Tito Puente and the New York salsa bands of the 1960s to J-Lo and Ricky Martin and Luis Fonsi and Bad Bunny, which is like the best name ever. Puerto Rican pop and reggaeton is blasted through subwoofers all over the world. You probably know this song.
Despacito, vamos a hacerlo en una playa en Puerto Rico.
Because it is the most streamed song of all time. And Puerto Rican pop has had an audible influence on the sound of the rest of the American pop scene, especially over the last few years, as Latin pop, as it's often called, rises in popularity. Pero ¿por qué estamos hablando de Puerto Rico? I'm glad you asked, because last summer, 8 months ago, as I film this right now, Puerto Rico was rocked by mass protests, some of over 500,000 people, which, remember, in a place where the population is a little over 3 million, that's 1 out of every 6 people on the island, so that's kind of a lot. So, what are all these people protesting? They were calling for the governor of Puerto Rico, Ricardo Rosselló, to resign. After hundreds of pages, like 800 some pages of incredibly offensive messages between him and other high-ranking government officials were published by El Centro de Periodismo Investigativo de Puerto Rico. And it worked. About 2 weeks after the protest started, Rosselló stepped down. And I'm bringing this up to you because music played a very important role in the protest movement. So, I have thrown a lot of information at you, and you do not need to retain all that. It's just to give you a little background on what we're going to do next. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to listen to an episode of the podcast Code Switch entitled Puerto Rico Stands Up. There is a link in the description below this video that will take you there. Listen to the podcast, which is about 25 minutes long, and then, this is the most important part, come back to this video here and answer the following 2 questions in the comments section. Question number 1. Music played a central and integral part of the protest movement in many ways. What is an example of how this is true? Question number 2. What are some other things from the podcast that you found interesting, significant, or surprising? There are no right or wrong answers to these questions. Actually, there is one wrong answer, and that would be if you don't answer. That's incorrect. And I encourage you guys to read and comment on and discuss about the stuff that your peers bring up. So, happy podcast listening, and I look forward to reading what you got to say.